Good evening. I'll call to order this meeting of the Cotati City Council and the successor agency to the former Cotati Community Redevelopment Agency. We'll begin with a roll call, please.
Councilmember Savage.
Present.
Councilmember Sparks.
Here.
Councilmember Harvey.
Here.
Mayor Ford.
Here.
Show Vice Mayor Lemus is absent.
Thank you. We begin our meetings with a land acknowledgement followed by the Pledge of Allegiance, and I invite you to stand with us if you'd like for those. The City of Cotati recognizes that we're on the ancestral lands of the Coast Miwok, who are the original caretakers of this area. We respectfully acknowledge the indigenous peoples who have been stewarding and maintaining a relationship on this land as knowledge keepers for millennia. This acknowledgement does not take the place of authentic relationships with indigenous communities, but serves as a gesture of respect to the land we are on. Now pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. We have a special item on the agenda next, which is administration of oath of office to our newest council member. I will point out that the city clerk did administer a oath at the beginning of the next meeting after he was appointed by the council so that he could participate last week in our special meeting, but this is the public ceremony to administer the oath. Attorney, do I need to take public comment on this item? Administration of the oath. No. Yeah, okay. We'll open up for public comment prior to administering the oath. Go ahead, Mr. Barrett.
Thank you, Mayor. I just have a quick question. You started to allude on the rationale for this tonight, but my question was, since we did administer an oath at the last meeting, why is it necessary to do it again? Seems redundant. If officially and legally Mr. Savage took the oath, I don't see any reason to do it again. It's kind of a waste of time. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? All right, let's check on Zoom, see if anybody has a public comment on the oath of office.
Thank you, Mayor Ford. Speaking to our Zoom attendees, please use the raise hand icon to make a public comment. Seeing no hands, that will end public comment.
Okay, thank you. I'm just going to respond briefly that administration of the oath of office for a new council member is something we always do publicly. We didn't do it publicly last time because it was a special meeting, so we're just keeping with our standard practice. So the Assistant City Clerk will administer the oath. Where would you like the council member? Okay, thank you.
State your name. I, John Savage. Do solemnly swear. Do solemnly swear. That I will support and defend. That I will support and defend. The Constitution of the United States. The Constitution of the United States. And the Constitution of the State of California. And the Constitution of the State of California. Against all enemies. Against all enemies. Foreign and domestic. Foreign and domestic. That I will bear true faith. That I will bear true faith. And allegiance. And allegiance. To the Constitution of the United States. To the Constitution of the United States. And the Constitution of the State of California. And the Constitution of the State of California. That I take this obligation freely. That I take this obligation freely. Without any mental reservation. Without any mental reservation. Or purpose of evasion. Or purpose of evasion. And that I will well and faithfully. And I will well and faithfully. Discharge the duties. Discharge the duties. Upon which I am about to enter. Upon which I am about to enter. Congratulations. Thank you very much.
Congratulations. Thank you. We'll move on to item 6, which is approval of minutes and notice of waiving of reading of all resolutions and ordinances introduced and or adopted under this agenda. We have one set of minutes. Has anybody identified any corrections that are needed in the minutes of February 11th? Okay, this is an action item, so I'll take public comment if there's any comment on the adoption of the minutes. Approval of the minutes, sorry. Not seeing any in the room. Let's check with Zoom.
Thank you, Mayor Ford. Once again, speaking to our Zoom attendees, please use the raise hand icon to make a public comment on this item. Mayor Ford, that will end public comment.
Thank you. I have a few announcements to read. Sorry. Oh, we need to, I always forget to take the vote on the minutes until somebody calls me on it. All right, is there a motion to approve the minutes?
Move to approve the minutes of February 11th.
Second?
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, 3-0 with 1 abstention. Thank you. We're done with public comment on minutes. We're moving on to announcements next. There will be a public comment period later.
For announcements?
There is no public comment period for announcements. I will make announcements now. Meeting orientation for new attendees, viewers. In conformance with the Brown Act and the adopted City Council rules, the meeting agenda includes items labeled as action items, where the City Council may consider the item. If the City Council considers the item, citizens will be afforded the opportunity to provide comments relevant to the item being discussed. The meeting agenda also includes a citizens' business item, which is the designated place on the agenda where citizens have the right to say whatever they wish. However, the Brown Act prohibits the City Council from taking action or considering any item that is not on this agenda to ensure that other members of the community who wish to provide comment are notified in advance through a properly noticed meeting agenda. B, Measure S supports police services, a variety of recreation programs for all ages, and the maintenance of our streets, parks, and public buildings. See details on the web at cotadicity.gov. C, citizens interested in receiving City of Cotati community alerts via text or email are encouraged to enroll with Civic Ready by signing up on the city's website, www.cotadicity.gov, under the How Do I link at the top of the homepage. And finally, like always, we love to hear from you, so please feel free to contact the city at 707-792-4600 or info@cotadicity.gov. If you have a non-emergency issue after normal business hours, you can contact us at 707-792-4611. And of course, if you have an emergency, please contact 911. Continue to look for updates on the city's website and social media channels available on Facebook, Instagram, and Civic Ready. On to item 8, approval of final agenda. Are there any proposed changes?
No proposed changes, Mayor.
Okay, so we'll move on to item 9, which is citizen business and public comment for consent calendar items. Any member of the public wishing to speak to the council on any items listed on the consent calendar or any matters not listed on the agenda that are within the subject matter jurisdiction of the council may do so at this time. Pursuant to the Brown Act, the council is not allowed to consider issues or take action on any item not listed on the agenda. Pursuant to City Council Policy 2023-01, comments of any member of the public are normally restricted to a total of 3 minutes in length per person for matters not on the agenda, and a total of 3 minutes per person in length for any and all items on the consent calendar. The mayor may extend the time limit for a reasonable time where a disability accommodation has been requested. To facilitate public comment, the deputy clerk will alert speakers when there are 30 seconds remaining. It's actually our light system that will alert you with a yellow light when that happens. All right, so citizen business and public comment, I'm going to open it up in the room first. Anybody wishing to, I do have one speaker's card. Thank you. Mr. Barrett, you can come on up first.
Mr. Mayor, I apologize for sounding redundant. Can you please read my speaker card as I submitted it?
You wrote Councilman George Barrett.
Thank you, sir. That's all I ask. That's all I ask to be referred to. I deserve that courtesy. It's proper etiquette, as we well know. I sound like a broken record, but I just think by this ongoing childness conduct on your part just furthers this shaming of our city and City Hall. It's not necessary. We've gone over this. I've earned my title as former City Councilman George Barrett or Councilman George Barrett, and your animosity is just too glaring. I pay taxes. I deserve respect. I sent the police chief a brief email. My suggestion is that we start having an armed and uniformed officer in the chambers during these meetings. They can be contentious. I'm always worried about everybody's safety, and I think I've been to some other city council meetings in other cities, and it's very common to see a uniformed officer sitting in the back of the room who has a clear 180-degree view of this room and can have a jump on somebody who might be violent towards us in the chamber. So I'd like you to consider that, maybe putting that on a future agenda item, because safety and security is very close to my heart, as you know from my profession. If the city wanted to control George Barrett, I think you should have appointed me to the vacant seat at the last meeting. But now, since I'm not on the council, you really can't control me, and it was really a missed opportunity. It went right over your head. I would also ask that the city stop taking photographs and live video and audio recordings into my backyard by neighbors or agents of the city. I want it to stop. I would like to remind the council, if it's not too much to ask, to please show me the same respect as you do to Ms. Lemus and Mr. Savage, who have received no votes from any citizens in this town. That's the very least I could ask. The silly 2009 recall election of George Barrett in 2009 really hurt Cotati. And now, because of the recall passed by your major propaganda campaign and machine to wipe out dissent in Cotati and in these chambers, you now claim I'm not worthy of filling the vacant seat on the city council, even though I received some 864 votes from the citizens of this town to be on that council. And I want that to sink into you, for you. Very silly. When all the other applicants for the vacant seat on the city council, the vacant seat during the last election, they sat out of the election. They sat on their butts, they sat on their hands, and didn't lift a finger to run. However, George Barrett stepped up to answer the call to lead. This hate for diversity and intolerance has been exposed in living color. And, there's hate speech and there's hate conduct. And they're very, very similar. Thank you.
Thank you. I meant to point out for people who noticed that the time on the clock was not the standard 3 minutes for the last speaker, that there was an accommodation request that we're recognizing throughout the meeting. So that 4 minutes will appear for that speaker throughout the meeting. Anybody else in the chambers? Okay, let's check with Zoom attendees.
Thank you, Mayor Ford. Once again, speaking to our Zoom attendees, please use the raise hand icon to make a public comment. The first hand is from Lori. Lori, you have the floor.
And the speaker also has an accommodation, so we'll do 4 minutes.
You need to stop. Sorry, I'm really angry at the moment. Mr. Ford, you need to stop identifying us as people with disabilities to get accommodations. I have sent that to you multiple times. In 2016, it was in that we had to have the mayor announce our disability. I brought in a bunch of ADA experts, and it was changed in 2017. And this is just a pattern of what's happening right now. You're messing with our ADA accommodations because you have no other way to retaliate against us right now. You also are requiring each meeting for us to do an accommodation request. You have accommodations are not time specific. They don't expire. And for 10 years, you have the pattern and you have the history of giving me 1 minute. And this stuff needs to stop. I can get tons of ADA experts in there for you guys. And I'm just tired also. Last week's meeting was full of hate from you guys. Hate, hate, more hate. You talk about everything, but you don't. I had a sick feeling for days afterwards. Mr. Ford, you need to resign as mayor. You manipulated the process by only allowing 2 people to go forward. This needs to stop. And this isn't even getting into the code enforcement scandal that is, you guys need to listen to everybody and do anything. You have an empty room other than the reporter and everything. This is because of your actions, not ours. You bullied everybody away. There's Damien and the crew, especially over the years, have bullied everybody away, and this is not a democracy. Thank you.
Thank you.
The next hand is from Neil Hancock. Neil, you have the floor.
Yes, hello, Council. I got to say, I feel very nervous coming into this setting with some of the words that have actually been said previously, with the demeanor that Mr. Barrett has had in the past in this room when he looked like he was threatening to punch me in 2014, and I had to make an affidavit to that effect. So it's very nervous coming into this, and I put the people who create this as the 2 previous speakers on this. So my question might be, how would I claim an extra minute in there, or any other member of the public who's just coming in to talk on this? Now, the question I really wanted to bring up for citizens' business that I'm really addressing here, if I can maintain my composure with the current climate that has been set by the previous 2 speakers. When large packets are produced by the staff and put out for public comment with a very short period of notice, it's very hard to process them. This was commented by Kay Rivers previously, back in November when the 1,600-page packet was put out. And I'd like to suggest also that this is the case for the current water packet, or the packet talking about the water rate study, is that it was fairly hard to try and get through that for a normal citizen during the period. What Petaluma does, it puts the future agenda into the consent calendar. So you can actually see the agenda 2 weeks ahead of time on the consent calendar. And that seems to me to be a reasonable compromise, that if there is documents that are large, for them to be visible ahead of time. Anyway, I appreciate this opportunity just to bring it up. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
There's another hand from a person who already spoke.
Okay, we only have one time per. Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, that's right. If there's a comment on the consent calendar, that would be allowable. That's right. So, Lori, did you wish to comment on the consent calendar?
Lori, you have the floor for the consent calendar.
I love your attitude tonight. Yes, consent calendar. You guys spent the sidewalks project outside. $30,000 was spent on Maple Avenue, but they ran out of the contingency fund. So now there is, you've left now, because they ran out of money, they pretty much left the whole project. The whole project is left dangerously out. I've been living with it for 3 months now, of cars running in front of us and everything. There needs to be plans when basically contract runs out, you have an emergency to fill up this. And I just want to make a statement about Neil Hancock. 2014, that was taken to federal court. He's lying. The other thing is, you need to not let personal attacks against citizens. That's in your code of ethics, and you did it again. Thank you.
Thank you.
Seeing no further hands on Zoom, that will end public comment.
Okay, thank you. Is there anybody on council who wishes to pull the consent calendar item? Okay. Seeing none, I'll welcome a motion to approve the consent calendar.
Move to approve the consent calendar. Second?
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? 4-0. Thank you. Okay, so we'll move on to any direction on future agenda items? Yes, Councilmember Sparks.
Thank you. I've discussed this with the city manager, Obid, earlier. I would like us to invite our library commissioner to come and give us an initial report on her first few months serving, and then allow for an opportunity for a discussion with the council about our priorities regarding the library system in Cotati.
Any objections to including that on a future agenda on the council? Okay. Any other future agenda item requests? Okay, thank you. So we'll move on to our regular agenda. Item 12A is adoption of a resolution accepting the draft water and sewer rate study and directing staff to proceed with the Proposition 218 public noticing process for proposed water and sewer rate adjustments, and to set a date for the public hearing and the adoption of rates. We'll begin with a staff report.
Mayor, members of the council, Craig Scott, Public Works Director, City Engineer. The city owns and operates and provides services to its customers, residents, businesses, a water and a sewer utility. And periodically, the city needs to adjust rates to be in line with actual expenditures for operations and maintenance, and then for the capital program. The last time we had the rate update was in 2022, and it was for a 5-year program. It's been a few years since then, and what's typical is you revisit it every 2 to 3 years. So it's about time to do that, to make sure that the projections of expenses are tracking or to make some corrections if they're varying a little bit. It's also an opportunity to look at what capital projects we've completed and to adjust the CIP accordingly based on what's being completed and any new needs that arise. The city has hired Hildebrand Consulting, and we have Mark Hildebrand here with us tonight to make the bulk of the presentation.
Welcome.
Good evening. Thank you for having me. I'll be giving a brief PowerPoint presentation on the findings of our study and recommendations. Do I direct somebody to click? Or? Yeah. I can just click. Okay, next slide. So in terms of the agenda, first I'll cover the water utility and then the sewer utility. For both, we're going to be looking at the financial plan. Oh, great. And specifically for focusing on some of the capital spending forecasts, which are the primary drivers for the rate adjustments that we're proposing here this evening. And then we will wrap up with the schedule. Next slide. Before I talk about the specifics of the water utilities, I just want to give some background in terms of how water and sewer rates are set in California. There is a law that's commonly known as Proposition 218 that dictates how the city has to charge its rates. There's two primary principles to Prop 218. The first one is the substantive criteria, which simply says that the city can't charge more than the cost of providing service. So you can't charge more for water than it costs and then transfer money to the general fund, or you can't make a profit, that sort of thing. So one of my jobs as your consultant is to ensure that the costs that are being charged to your customers are going entirely into the two utilities and paying for the services that are being provided. The second portion of Prop 218 is the procedural part, which says that if you do want to raise rates, you do have to send out a notification to the public and give them an opportunity to protest against the proposed rates. So just a little bit of background there. Next slide. So we did do a 5-year rate study back in 2020 and adopted a schedule of rates. The study that we're doing now obviously is ahead of schedule in terms of the 5-year rate schedule goes until 2027, but we did want to check in on the utilities to make sure that everything's on track in terms of what was forecasted. We don't have a perfect crystal ball, and so when we do these 5-year studies, we do need to check in with the numbers to make sure everything's on track. And we did find that for both utilities, some of the costs have exceeded expectations, and so we are looking to make an adjustment to what was previously proposed. Next slide. So for the water utility, here's a snapshot of the expenses. This is the budget for the current fiscal year. You can see different categories there. And one of the larger cost categories are purchases of water from Sonoma County Water Agency. More than a third, or about a third of your costs are directly paid to purchase that water. And that's one of the major points of one of the major expenses that was not fully anticipated back in 2022, or the increases that are occurring from Sonoma County. So you can see a total budget, operating budget here of $2.28 million per year. Next slide. We did make some assumptions about how those costs were going to increase over the next 10 years. Again, we don't have a crystal ball. We do our best based on history and based on current economic climate. We try to be as conservative as possible when we can, so salaries and benefits are pretty close to historical inflation. Utilities, we do have increasing at 18% in the immediate, and then for the current year, based on information that we have from the utilities, then 8% for the next 2 years, and then going back to 5% thereafter. Same sort of pattern with insurance. And then water purchases, we do have an assumption that they're going to increase by 12%, and then conservatively dropping back to 6%, even though we do have reason to believe that it might be closer to 10% in the long run. But we are trying to be as conservative as possible, or sorry, as optimistic as possible in that case. Sub-regional is not a water cost, it's a wastewater cost, but just to cover all the inflation assumptions on one slide. That's the wastewater treatment service that you get from the city of Santa Rosa, and we are assuming it'll be 6% this year and then averaging 4% thereafter. I happen to be the consultant to Santa Rosa as well, and so those numbers are based on forecasts that I've done with them. And then all other costs, we're assuming it will go up by 3%. Next slide. So here is a look at what's going to happen on the capital spending side for water. So you can see over the last couple of years, the spending has been quite low. And there's going to be a really large increase in annual capital spending going forward. One of the big projects that I think that you're aware of that has been getting teed up for some time is the Cypress storage tank and associated water main for that tank. But just generally speaking, aside from just that one big project, there is what I would call a new normal in terms of how much the city of Cotati is going to be reinvesting in its infrastructure going forward. There is a need to address aging pipes, and the city's decision to proactively address its infrastructure needs are much more prudent than waiting for things to fail and then fixing them once they fail. It's significantly more expensive to fix infrastructure after it fails than addressing it ahead of time. And so what we see here is the city's decision to be more proactive in terms of repair and replacing aging infrastructure. Next slide. Here's the same picture, except for with numbers. You can see over from fiscal 25 through fiscal 30 some specific projects that are being that have been scheduled for a total of $8.6 million over the next 6 years. Next slide. Here's that same graph, but with color-coded to show the finance strategy, the funding strategy that's being proposed. Because the large spike in capital spending that's going to happen in the immediate term, and the fact that the water utility does not have a very deep reserve in cash, it will be necessary to debt finance the majority of the capital spending over the next 4 years. And then starting in fiscal 31, we'd go back to what we call PAYGO, or cash-funded capital spending. But we are proposing debt in order to fund the capital spending, for most of the capital spending over the next 5 years. Next slide. And here is a cash flow graph of the next 10 years. So the top graph is comparing revenues against expenses. The revenues in the background in green, and the expenses are the columns that are superimposed over the green. So the dark blue would be your operating expense. The dashed blue in the middle is your debt service. So you can see that debt service jumping in 27, 28. That's the new debt that you'll be taking on from the debt-funded capital. And then the light blue on the top is the cash-funded capital. In terms of the green, the light green is your existing rate revenue, and the dark green is the additional rate revenue that will be that you'll receive once you impose the rate increases that are being proposed here. The middle graph, the lines show the reserves. So you can see the reserves are above your reserve target currently, but they will be drawn down steadily over the next 10 years as the capital spending increases. The rate increases are shown at the bottom, and I can't see them because of the dialog box. But if memory serves, they are 6% per year for the next 5 years. Thank you. That's water, sorry. That was the wrong row. Okay, yeah. Okay, so 11% for the next 3 years, and then 8% for 2 years. We do have this compared in the row below to 6% per year. That's just to show that within the context of what had been previously proposed. These are increases over what we anticipated, but we were anticipating at least 6% increases at the time before we knew that costs were going to increase the way that they did. Next slide. So what changed since 2022? Why are we needing to increase the rates by more than 6% as we had previously anticipated? First, your revenue is lower than we thought it would be. The usage revenue is lower by 16% or $220,000 per year due to decreases in water usage by your customers. It's a unfortunate reality of the water industry. People say, well, you tell us to conserve and we conserve and now you charge us more. It's unfortunate. It's the way it works. When the water utility receives less revenue, their costs don't go down by the same amount. There's a lot of fixed costs associated with running a utility. And those costs, the fixed costs don't go down. And when revenue does, it does require a readjustment of the financial plan. The capital spending was increasing significantly. Back in the 2022 study, we had anticipated $5.8 million of capital spending between 2025 and 2032. And now when we look at the projection, it's a 79% increase over that. It's $10.4 million during that same time period. And then the operating expenses will be, were previously projected at $2.27 million in fiscal 26. And the actual budget is 2.42, which is 6% higher. As I mentioned earlier, it's largely been being driven by the water supply, Sonoma County water purchases, but it's also utilities, insurance, salaries. I think everyone's aware of how insurance costs are going up and utility costs are going up. So, next slide. Thank you. So this is just a table that shows what the actual rates would look like. This is with the 11% rate increases over the next 3 years, followed by the 2 8% rate increases. So just puts it into numbers. Next slide. And in terms of what it would look like for customers on their actual bill, you can see that their current bill for, say, average water user, average single-family water user, current bill is $52.52 for the month. The proposed bill would be, in year one, would be $58.29, and so that would be a $5.77 increase per month for that customer. And you can look at this table to find different types of customers and how they'll be affected on a monthly basis. Next slide. Okay, before I jump into sewer, any questions on the water utility? Happy to field any questions from the council. No?
I have a couple. If you could maybe go back to slide number 8. When we're talking about the Cypress, that's filled with harvested water. Is that what that is? That's not well water or anything that's in there?
It's the treated drinking water.
Okay.
Yeah.
That comes from?
A combination of wells and the Sonoma County Water Agency.
Okay, so both agencies fill that. It's not run on harvested water. It comes from those two agencies. Okay. Okay. Do we have any fee associated with the groundwater that we pull out, or is that no cost? The well water that we pull.
Those are part of our expenses.
Yeah.
The energy to pump it, the chemicals to
Is
treat
that
it.
called out on the expense pie that we looked at? It had Sonoma County water on there, I saw, but I didn't.
There'd be utility costs associated with the electricity of pulling up the
Okay,
water
so that would
and
all be
labor.
a utility cost.
Right.
Okay, okay.
There's also the Groundwater Sustainability Agency has a pumping charge as well.
And that's in the utility cost as well.
Yes, that's a fee we pay to be part of the GSA.
Okay. That's all questions I had.
Is that a volume based?
Yeah, based on our metered volume, yes.
Other Councilmember Harvey?
So on the next slide, you said that the debt would only be for 4 years, yet when I look at the other slides, it looks like that debt's going out for, I can't tell how far.
Right, the projects that are being debt financed is over a 4-year period of capital spending, but then the repayment period of the debt is 20 years.
Okay.
So these hashed parts of the bars are debt repayment.
Correct. Those are debt payments as opposed to the debt finance projects, which will be delivered over the course of 4 years.
Okay, but the repayment of that is a longer period of
Correct.
time. So when we say the debt proposed, it's not 4 years, it's over 20 years.
Correct, yeah.
Okay.
If I said that, I
Okay.
misspoke.
I-
I meant that the
It would
over
be
that
great if we
4-year
could pay it in 4 years.
That's
That'd be
right,
like
yeah.
awesome, but yeah.
Over a 4-year period, most of your capital projects will be debt financed.
Okay. And is there, so the Cypress tank has been going on and on for well over 30 years now, and we've had it in our proposed financial plan over and over and over again. Is there a way, if it gets moved again, that because it's included in this rate increase, that we put that money aside so it doesn't get used for something else, so we can build that fund up?
So,
Yes.
so I can also let Mark speak, but the only way we can afford it besides a significant rate increase is to go out for debt financing. And so that financing mechanism would be linked to the development of those projects. And so it could be exclusively used for that project. So I believe there were also discussions about you want to tie the rates to the debt service.
Right, so we've increased rates multiple times, included the Cypress tank, but that money ultimately was used for other higher priority things, and we didn't do the Cypress tank. So all I'm suggesting is that if that gets moved again, which I've seen it move now for over 30 years, that we start taking that money in that increase rate and putting that aside so that the debt, whatever it is, when we finally get around to it, will have saved some funds to help offset the debt.
And we could do that through a reserve, because we know how much we're anticipating to take out in the debt service. So we would build out an amortization schedule and make sure we build that out in reserves each year as a part of our policy.
Okay. Yeah, I'm just concerned about us we keep raising the rates to incorporate it, and then we use that money for something else. I just want to get it saved if we don't do it, that's all.
Right, and the fact that you'll be debt financing it actually will obligate the city to use that money for the Cypress project, because you can't use debt money to pay for operations. You have to use it on capital. So the actual fact that you're going out for debt will basically force the hand of the city to deliver the project that is going out for debt.
Yeah, that's a slightly different scenario than we were talking about.
Okay.
But that's fine. We're going to, so keep with questions for now, and we'll save the discussion for after the full presentation and public comment.
Okay. Next slide to.
Do you want to clarify that some more?
Yeah, I would like to clarify that, because if let's say we don't do the debt service until we're going to do it, we still will have raised the rates based upon this schedule.
True.
That's what I'm talking about.
Okay.
Okay, all right, I just
Thank
wanted
you.
to get it clear in my
Yeah,
little-
just based on the assumptions, we create sort of a debt financing schedule. If the actual debt financing doesn't happen, it's scheduled to happen like in a year, right? If it doesn't happen for 5 years, we can start setting the money aside every year now.
Right.
As if we did it in year one.
Okay,
But not actually do it until year 5, or whenever
Okay.
we actually do it.
thank you.
It's a good point.
Thank you.
It was- Yeah.
So any more questions about the water study? We'll move on to sewer. Great.
Okay, slide 16, please. So these slides will be familiar, same format for the sewer utility. On this slide, the largest expense is the outsourcing of the treatment operations to the city of Santa Rosa through the sub-regional treatment plant. That's about 65% of the cost to the city. So the city operations is to manage and operate the collection system, and then it takes that wastewater and sends it to Santa Rosa where that wastewater gets treated. Next slide. Here is a look at the capital spending for the sewer utility, and you can see that there isn't necessarily an increase in capital spending relative to the last couple of years. But there is an intent to, again, have a proactive approach to addressing the sewers, utility, and the infrastructure, the aging infrastructure. Next slide. Here's a list of the specific projects that will be delivered over the next 6 years for about $2.7 million. Next slide. And the 10-year forecast here shows that the picture is a little bit more simple. There's no debt that's being proposed for sewer. The rate increases are substantial as well. We are looking at 10% per year for the next 4 years, and then a 5% increase. We'll go over the specifics of what are driving those costs. But you can see that the reserves in that lower graph are dropping pretty quickly. They're above reserve targets at the moment, but the utility is operating in a deficit scenario right now. The operating expenses are higher than the revenues. That's without any capital spending at all. So when we do capital spending, it will start drawing down on those reserves quite quickly. Next slide. So in this case, what changed since 2022 is that, again, the reduction in water usage is resulting in a reduction in revenue, same dynamic as water. The capital spending has doubled. That was forecasted from 2025 to 2032. We projected it would be $2.1 million back in 2022, and now we're expecting it to be $4.2 million. And the operating expenses haven't changed very much from what we had forecasted previously. So the increases are mostly driven by the increase in capital spending. Next slide. So here are the rates that are being proposed for sewer. Not very interesting in itself, so I think the next slide, if you go to slide 22, I think this slide is the slide that makes it a little bit more interesting to folks in terms of being able to see how folks' monthly bill will be affected. So you can see an average single family currently pays about $90.52, and with the proposed rates in year one, would go to $99.59. Next slide. Here is a survey that shows where how the Cotati compares to other utilities up and down the 101. And you can see that I would say that currently the city of Cotati is sort of bottom of the middle pack, right in kind of the middle pack, but the bottom. And with the proposed rate increases, you'd be more higher up in the middle of the pack there. As I mentioned earlier, I do work with quite a few of these agencies myself, and I can tell you that everyone is going in a very similar direction. You won't be increasing while everybody stands still. So I'd expect your rank to stay pretty steady within this group over the next 5 years. Next slide. And that concludes my presentation. This was our preliminary recommendation to City Council. We would like to take any comments that you might have so that we can make any final adjustments to our recommendation based on your feedback and come back on March 11th to give that final recommendation to Council. After that time, we'd send out the required Proposition 218 notices so that we could hold the public hearing in late May.
Are there any questions on either the sewer or the process piece? Councilmember Sparks.
I have 4 questions. Sorry for so many questions. First one was the sewage rate after we do our proposed rate increase. Our sewage rate is significantly higher than a lot of other cities, especially Santa Rosa. It's much higher. Is that mainly because of these capital projects, or are there other factors that are? It's hard to break down exactly what is it that's so different about us compared to the other cities that's making the sewer rate so much higher.
Could we go to the survey slide? So when we look at the city of Santa Rosa sewer, I don't have the numbers off the top of my head. I'm not.
Just measuring with my fingers here on the bar graph, but
Yeah, I mean,
yeah.
just,
I know some of the other cities have very different sewage systems than we do, but,
Sure.
you know, if we're contracting Santa Rosa for our water treatment, it's
Right.
wastewater treatment, I'm kind of curious why our sewage rates end up being so much higher than theirs.
sure, so the cost difference would have to be on the collection side, because the treatment is very equitable in terms of the amount of capacity that you take at the plant and the amount of volume that goes there, and that's split between 5 different agencies pretty equitably. So the cost difference would fall in the collection side. Off the top of my head, I would say that, you know, Santa Rosa is obviously much larger, and they have the advantage of efficiencies of scale. It's a pretty common theme in my line of work that smaller utilities have higher rates because they simply don't have the same efficiencies of scale.
Thank you. Second question, I know that some of these capital projects on the sewer side are intended to reduce infiltration of groundwater and stormwater, and so hopefully, once those projects get completed, that should give us some savings in terms of the amount of wastewater that's being treated. Is that in any way reflected in the rate study? And do we have any idea what the magnitude of those savings would be, or when they might start to kick in?
So in terms of forecasting a reduction in how much water needs to be treated, that was not included as an assumption
Okay.
in there. Would that be able to be, would we be able to quantify that?
That's something we watch very closely. However, we have not been implementing the capital improvement program per schedule because of the large proportion of is a sub-regional plan. But there, that is an objective of ours. It's a long game type of thing that we're going to measure over 10, 15, 20 years rather than, oh, we did a really big project this year, let's see a significant drop. It's going to be something that we see happen over 10, 20 years. Really very gradual improvement. And it's kind of a race against the other sub-regional partners because as all of our systems age, we want to be better at the others at tightening up our system. So
That makes sense. Third question, I was thinking about our EIFD enterprise or enhanced infrastructure financing possibilities. And I know this had come up when we were discussing the Santero Way specific plan that some of these sewage improvements are going to be necessary in order to develop out more housing. So is there any possibility that we could fund some of the sewage replacements using an instrument like that? And if so, would that lead to any ability to maybe blunt some of the impact of these rate increases, like kind of farther out into the future?
So the simple answer is yes, although in this particular rate study in the near term, there's no big projects like that. There certainly are bigger capital projects down the road that would be eligible for something like an EIFD, where the county could participate with the city to do it.
So a follow-up question, if we were able to investigate and make a plan for that in the next few years, could we come back to these planned rate increases and revisit them?
Sure, yeah, I don't think, in the near term, the type of projects that are proposed in this one, it won't have a significant difference in these particular maintenance projects, but when we get to the next study, as we start talking about larger capital projects, it could definitely make a difference, yeah.
And then the last question was just about the Prop 218 letter. I noticed that the table with the proposed, estimated costs for residents, it says residential, and then it has some tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, and then below it, it says multifamily, commercial, blah, blah. So I'm thinking people on that letter might get confused and not, is there a possibility we could just change the residential part to say single-family residential, just to clarify for residents? Or do we have, or is this all set in stone how it needs to be worded by the proposition?
You're just pointing out that duplexes and multiplexes are residential.
Exactly. So people who live in a duplex might think, oh, I'm a residential customer. Here's my rate. You know, they not realize what category they fall into. So
That's a great comment. We'll look to see what we can do to clarify that, because you've got residential, multifamily is residential too, but they're in the non-residential category, so.
Is that something that could be possible to include in the bill, like by their water tier, what tier they're in, so they would know? I don't know how customizable that stuff is.
We could absolutely look to add something like that. We worked pretty hard on the current bill to try to get it updated, and so adding that additional information might not be, but that's something that's always available for customers, and I believe it's online on their portal. It says their rates and stuff,
We might call that
We'll have to
out maybe in the
double-check that.
Cotati Connection sometime or something, call it
Yeah.
out to people
Okay.
to be aware.
You're asking about the tier specifically
Yeah.
with each water bill, like which tier you're in?
Yeah, in case there's some confusion around that.
Yeah, and the tiers are on there, I think, on the one side, so maybe that was not a good example to provide, because
Oh, I'm sorry, I do tier one, it says tier
Yeah,
one here. Okay,
yeah.
I'm sorry, I didn't see that.
Now we know you don't use that much water.
You know, as a matter of fact, we are very frugal at 6303.
Okay, questions?
Yeah, I have a couple questions. On slide 16, on the pie chart under sub-regional O&M and debt, that 65% is just such a big number. I just want to clarify if I understood this correctly. I did see in the staff report that there's $776,000 in debt service for the sub-regional included into that, and I calculated that out to about 20% of the pie. So then the O&M would be 45% of the pie. Does that sound about right?
That sounds about right.
Okay. And then the reserves currently, I understand that sewer has about 1.55 million extra in the reserves, and water has about 1.7 million extra in the reserves. So there's almost, 3 million there. And then we've got the 8 million we're going to spend. So when these rate increases, are they calculated on an $8 million increase, or are they calculated on a $5 million increase because we've got 3 million in excess reserves?
Well, you can, first you can't commingle it, right? Because
Well, then
the
just
whole Prop
split it,
218 says those are two different enterprises, so we can't really think of it in terms of combined. But the two graphs that showed the 10-year forecast with the bar chart and stuff, the second graph down, the line graph with the red line, shows what's happening to the reserves, what's forecasted to happen to the reserves. So you can see it starting at a certain level. In both cases, the reserves will be dropping over the next 10 years. The sewer is dropping down very quickly. Over the next 2 years, you'll get down to your reserve target, whereas water, it's tapered more.
So is that just going towards where we have a shortage from our rate and usage revenue?
That's right.
Make
You'll
up that
basically
gap?
you'll be operating in a deficit.
Okay, that makes
Every time that red line goes down, that means that you were in a deficit that year.
So the current overage that we have would be eaten away just in operating cost and as we move forward. Okay. Let's see, I think there was one more, but no, I think I'm good.
I'd just like to follow up on Councilmember Sparks. So I believe you said that the changes for the infiltration and all of that, that we won't really see any significant changes. Is that in this item number 2 on the capital project list, the sewer collection system R&R? Is that where that sits? And so some of the reason, if I think about this, is that that's also spread across. So the reason maybe we don't see it is we're spending a little and we're getting a little and we're spending a little and we're getting a little bit more. Is that another way of thinking? It's not like the other one where we're spending a lot and then maybe you could see a difference. This is kind of spending some every single year.
Yes, it's accomplished gradually over time,
Okay.
because replacing sewers are expensive. And so we just chunk it down. So we have an inventory now from an analysis we did where we CCTV'd, took videos
Right.
all over the deepest sewers, thinking that they're the most prone to having the highest INI. And then we're going to get through that inventory, and by the time we get to the end of that, we'll do another study to find the next likely suspects to be contributing. So it's a very gradual process.
Okay.
The other reason why, even if the city were to make great progress with reducing INI, the other reason that you won't necessarily see progress is that you're basically preventing backsliding. The cost that you're saving when you reduce your INI is how much you get charged by Santa Rosa.
Right.
And there's 4 other agencies that all contribute to Santa Rosa as well. And so they have a pie, they have their costs, and they divide that partly based on a fixed percentage, but partly based on how much flow goes there. I can tell you that all 4 of those other agencies are also working on their INI. So as they shore up their system and make improvements, you're basically competing with them. So as they do better and as you do better, you essentially won't see much of a difference in terms of how the pie gets beat. Now, if you improve your INI faster than they do, then you will start seeing a difference. But if you do it slower, then you might actually see your costs going up faster than they do. So it's a race against time.
Okay. And then my second follow-up was asked about comparing to the other cities on slide 23. I had to use the paper to try and see. Other than capital projects, it seems like Rohnert Park is significantly less than us. Do they not, is their infrastructure newer than our, I mean, they have old sections in their infrastructure also. It just seemed that their sewer in particular was a lot less than ours. I don't know if Craig has any thoughts on that, since he speaks with those folks. I get some of the other ones, but that one struck me.
The only thing I can think of is they're just larger than us. They get the economy of scale, but nothing
Okay.
else jumps out at me.
Okay, all right, thank you.
They do also use Santa Rosa treatment plant? Yeah.
Yes.
They're the only other ones on this list that use Santa Rosa, Rohnert Park, and us, right? Does Sebastopol use them?
There's Sebastopol, and Sonoma Water also has a collection system.
Okay, all right, yeah, okay, thank you.
Okay, any more questions? All right, thank you. And is there any more to the staff report, or shall I go to public comment?
I just wanted to make a clarification. The recommendation here is to, there is a path to accept the draft report and set the public hearing date tonight.
Right.
So that's the option as written in the current recommendation.
Right, thank you. Okay, so thank you. I will, Mark, did you have more you wanted to say?
No.
Okay, thank you. All right, if you see any changes needed to our resolution, just let us know. But I'm going to open this up to public comment right now. So we'll start on Zoom for public comment. We're going to start on Zoom. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Ford. Once again, speaking to our Zoom attendees, please use the raise hand icon to make a public comment. The first hand is from Lori. Lori, you have the floor.
I say this every time you raise the sewer. Somebody out in the city is going to have to tell my almost 88-year-old mother her sewer and her water's going up again. So that's tradition. I'm just going on. Where are we going to get all this debt, loans and everything? We've already had a huge jump in the loans in debt service, and proportion of our total budgets. And you put the streets, you put the buildings, you put the train depot, everything on as collateral. What do we have left? That just makes no sense and the other thing is, the west side here, we have even older pipes than most of the town. And like on Maple Avenue, it's been known for 30 years that 3 streams, 3 hillsides come down and underground streams go down to West Cotati Avenue. And that's also what happened with Cotati Hotel, is that grad's so saturated from all that. So the 30,000 you just spent for just putting in a sidewalk for the repair is only a Band-Aid. Huge sewer problem and water problems over on the west side that things are going to need to be replaced. I mean, some houses, the house across the street from me is 110 years old. I don't think the sewer's been done out here for, other than like West Cotati Avenue, but the smaller streets have not had the sewer in 100 years. So anyways, I just want to hope you can address this. And oh, one more thing, why is the 67-page proposed plan and information after the agenda item was received? If you were going to put that in, you needed to put it in at a special meeting or something. That was a whole nother agenda item. I did not like that. I think that's very improper. Thank you.
Thank you.
The next hand is from Neil Hancock. Neil, you have the floor.
Yes, good evening, Council. Thank you. Good to hear the discussion. Just as a point, my bill that I received, my water bill, doesn't state the connection type or the tier type that is being referenced. I mean, it's fairly obvious when you look at it and when you compare it, but it doesn't do that. I did put a letter in, and I hope those questions there would be visible. And I guess my question number 1 has resulted in the restatement of those rates. The other question I've got that's come up since then with the discussion is it, instead of putting dollars into the reserve, there's a proposal to put more dollars into the reserve study. Shouldn't that actually be paying down the debt? Isn't there a benefit in paying off the debt rather than having more in the reserve? That's typically the way I look at my own finances. The next question would be, as per what Councilmember Sparks brought up, in the methodical study of the reduced infiltration and inflow of groundwater, I did go through one of the first studies that was released with the city manager Obid at the time when he was in charge of that. And one of the things there is that the waste processing reception does have a flow meter. So I would think, the question really is can the extra inflow that results from the pipes during wet weather, can that portion be attributed in the 65% of current costs by the Santa Rosa wastewater plant? So we're paying 65%, and that includes a proportion that's inflow, and though that total cost, so it gets more complicated than that, but I'm just wondering, based on the flow meter and the way it increases, can that extra inflow cost be attributed? And that brings me to the other question that I identified in my written system, was how, for individual houses, how does the estimated cost for the sewer get established? In writing, it says estimated actual, when I think that really is an oxymoron, because it's estimated or it's actual. And then question number 3 in writing was, would there be any incentives for customers who implement grey water systems, that is plumbing changes to divert water to landscaping? And my 4th question in writing was, does the city publish the well water that it pumps? How much does it actually pump? So that's fitting into the three minutes that I've been given, and I think I can ask for another minute in the future, should I so desire. Thank you.
Thank you. Is that it for Zoom?
That was the last hand on Zoom. Yes, Mayor Ford.
Okay, now we'll take public comments in the chambers. Come on up, sir.
Yes, my name is Michael Hilber, and that last comment sort of answered one of my questions, is like how accurate a measurement are you getting as far as the sewer water that you're actually sending to the plant? My father was a wastewater operator a long, long time ago, you know, when the Santa Rosa plant was small, and the flows were 3 million gallons a day when he was there, which was, you know, a small fraction of what it is now. But I can tell you during the winter, you'd get triple that, 9 million gallons a day, and it would literally overflow the plant, you know, and that's when they would have to, you know, do things that you don't want to do, like release untreated wastewater because the plant couldn't keep up. Now, hopefully things are a lot better now, but some of that would come in, you know, I guess through the manhole covers and, you know, who knows how, you know, various ways it can get in there. But it would literally triple the flows to the plant. And secondly, I'd like to point out that, you know, this Sonoma water rate increases of 12% in this next year and 6% in the following years, you know, I consider that to be out of line. They have a budget that's really padded with a lot of bureaucracy. You know, one thing I noticed they have is they have, you know, communication staff, communication specialists, and they literally have a budget for social media. And, you know, I asked myself, where in the world do we get to this point in this society where, you know, bureaucracy is literally hiring people to engage in social media activities, and they literally do paid advertising on Facebook. So they're not only posting things on Facebook, but they're literally doing what's called paid advertising, which, you know, promotes it to the people who aren't following their page or anything. So, you know, just because they're you know, passing this 12% on to you doesn't mean it's right, you know, and they're just quite comfortable with, you know, padding their budget with overhead because, you know, my perspective is, you know, people don't really dig into the details and question it because, you know, it's all hidden in pages and pages of budget mumbo jumbo.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, we'll close public comment and bring that back. And so there were a number of questions raised. I'm wondering, Director Scott, if you want to address any of those.
I would,
Yeah.
yes. So we first heard from Lori Alderman, where are we getting the debt? If you want to address that.
So once we, so this would be the start process for us to go out and look and see what would be the best venue for going out for debt service or grants or funds of that nature. So getting the rate study completed and the rates adopted would be the best time to go out and look for that. I've already engaged several groups that we've worked with previously to let them know that this is coming up, and then we would be putting out proposals to help us through that process.
The second one, from Ms. Alderman, West Side has older pipes. Maple Avenue has 3 streams coming down to West Cotati Avenue. I think she was inferring that it would be difficult with the ground being saturated to replace pipes over there. And I think, I mean, those pipes went in with those developments on the west side. And during the summertime, the groundwater levels do drop. So that's when those pipes would be installed. I don't see that as being overly difficult to do. And then there was a comment about information, some corrections to the packet. Then Neil Hancock mentioned no connection type on bill. We'll take a look at that. And suggested paying down debt instead of having the reserve, and a reserve is a requirement for getting debt financing, you have to have a certain amount of reserve to be maintained for emergencies that come up to be a reliable utility. Number three, with the I&I, he understood that our sewer flows were metered, and that is correct. And we've had extensive flow meter analysis completed, so we can tease out. It's a very proven technology to tease out amount of base flow, and then the amount of flow you are getting from infiltration from the groundwater and infiltration you're getting from a storm event. They're very distinct contributions to the flow. So we're very aware of those, and that's what's leading us, our solutions to those, reducing those quantities. The estimated actual, so even though we have a flow meter on our trunk sewers, these are the giant sewers that go down to the, that collect all of the city's wastewater to the plant, there's obvious reasons we don't have meters on each of the individual service connections because they could plug and cause backups and damage and so forth. So we have to estimate what the actual flow is contributed by each household. And the way we do that, the way the industry does that, is to take the water use data in the wintertime when the irrigation would be zero, and saying most, if not all of that, is going into the sewer. So that's what we mean by estimated actual. The fifth question that Neil had was, is there a gray water system incentive? And the city does not currently offer an incentive other than that would lower your water bill and so that's an incentive in itself, that if you're watering your plants from a gray water system, you'd be using less water for irrigation. But we do not provide a rebate for installation of gray water systems. Finally, his last question, Neil Hancock's, was do we publish published well pumpage data? And the Groundwater Sustainability Agency, the Santa Rosa Plain GSA, produces an annual report, which is saying, hey, how are they doing on achieving their 20-year goal of achieving sustainability? They publish the city's annual groundwater pumpage in that report, and that's available on their website, those annual reports. I think Mike was the last speaker here, and he had a similar question about estimated actual, already addressed that. And his other question was, not a question, but rather a comment, the Sonoma water increases, in his opinion, he thought they were out of line. And so
that's fine.
That's all I had.
Thank you. I was going to ask if somebody who is involved with the Sonoma water rate setting process could address who looks through those many pages of budget budgets and actually digs into them.
Can I ask a follow-up question real quick first, just for Craig? Just on the estimated versus actual, can you tell me if I'm understanding this right, that the estimated is based on comparing your winter usage to, and using that as kind of like your, like subtracting that out of the rest of your year of usage, and anyway, I think I understand the estimated, but where I think people are getting confused is the actual. We don't, like you said, we don't have an actual usage. So my understanding was if you like in a season other than winter, your water usage is lower than your estimated sewage usage, then you would be charged for the full amount of your water usage. Is that correct? Am I saying that right? I think it's confusing because that's still not actual usage, right?
So for sewer, since we do not meter anything directly, we never have actuals. We could never provide an actual consumption, or not, it's not consumption, you're not consuming it. Sorry, wrong word. But we can never provide an actual, but it's our estimate of what the actual usage of water that goes into the wastewater system is.
Okay, so I think what's confusing is on some of the literature that's out there, it says we're going to look at your estimated or your actual and charge you for whichever is lower. But we don't actually have your actual. So I think what needs to be added is the actual water usage.
So we do. So
Yeah.
what we charge for sewer is your historical winter average or your actual, whichever is less.
But you
We
need,
don't have actual sewer usage
No,
data,
it's
so
your
it's
water.
actual water usage.
Right, exactly,
So I think
yes.
that needs to be clarified and say actual water
water.
usage.
Got it.
Yeah, so people understand.
That makes sense.
I would agree with that. Go right ahead.
Craig, does the Water Saving Partnership, have they ever looked at any kind of gray water type incentives or anything like that? That's kind of where that would kind of fit in. Do you know if they've ever looked at that?
Currently, I don't know, but the city, up till like 4 or 5 years ago, used to contract with Daily Acts, and we would give them a budget to have them take an example household, and they would install a gray water system at that household, and it would be observed by, it'd be
Right.
a publicized, advertised event, and others would go away knowing how to permit those systems, how to install those systems, and so forth. So it's something that's been offered in the past.
Okay, I just didn't know if that was something that the Water Saving Partnership had looked at. Okay, thank you.
So the one other comment I was wondering if anybody involved in the WAC could address is the worry that nobody actually looks through Sonoma Water's budget and pushes back against padded budgets.
Yes, thank you. And anyone involved in the WAC, I think, is me. Okay, so yes, I represent Cotati on our Water Advisory Committee, and we, in my time on there, we have multiple meetings where they go to the Technical Advisory Committee that Craig sits on, and I know that Craig looks through all that pretty carefully, and there's a lot of pressure and pushback. And in the last few years, when we've done the budgeting process at the Water Advisory Committee, they have come out with an initial proposal and then gotten so much pushback that the rate increases lessened by the time it actually gets approved by the contractors. The rate increases have gone down from what they initially proposed. Is that to say there's not more that we could look at and see if there's anything that could be trimmed? Absolutely, we could. I can bring that to them. I'll let them know that we've heard that from our residents. But I don't know. Is there any, Craig? Is there anything you'd like to add about that?
Sure. Just quickly, the Technical Advisory Committee has a budget subcommittee that meets as early as January, and I know I'm on that committee, and so is Angela, and we've gone through at least 2 iterations. And true to form, they've come down from their initial, and it's being very critical about, are you finishing the capital projects on schedule that you said the prior year you're going to get through? Are you getting through the studies, all the multiple studies, hiring, just the FTEs? We're looking for full transparency from the water agency, and we're very critical of them. And that comes before this body in March, yeah.
Yeah, so in March, we'll have another opportunity to come, if you'd like to, on the day when the Water Advisory, or the Sonoma Water rep is here to discuss the rate increase.
And I had one more question about the annual inflation assumptions in those, the year one, 18% utilities, 15% insurance, 12% water purchases. Are those actual one-year cost increase assumptions, or is there some catch-up there because we've gotten behind?
This is actually going from our budget, our adopted budget for 24-25. So this is actual one-year adjustments from the adopted budget. So it's not multiple years accumulating up to that. It's just the change from 24-25.
We really expected 18% jump in 1 year in utilities costs.
Yes.
Wow, and you're incorporating that in the full city budget, 18%?
I'm looking into it now,
Wow.
what we're gonna do, yeah.
Okay. Phew. All right, so discussion, and we have a resolution in the packet that I will dig up sometime.
Two things, based on kind of what Susan said, that the Cypress tank has been in previous iterations of the budget, but it sounds like at the end of the year, the money's not there, it's been spent on other necessities. I know we have a robust capital list proposed here for the water. Do we think by having all these items detailed on this capital list that the chance of those unanticipated expenses eating away into capital will be less this go-around? Or do we still have kind of a $2 million vulnerability of historically costs sneak up on us and take our money away from intended purposes?
It's a big factor we can't ignore is the recent drop in our water use. So that side of the equation has been dropping significantly. So one assumption that needs to play out is that the water demands start climbing again. And I think with the debt financing, that is something we have not had before for the water tank. And that's going to, I think, on the staff level, give a much higher level of commitment to getting this tank project underway if we have that debt financing as the basis of moving forward. So it's like it's reserved. It's just for that purpose. And that's what we have not had in the past.
Okay.
So.
And then my last question, when we were talking about the debt reserve payment going into the future years, if for some reason we wouldn't take out that loan, can we still take that money that was to go to pay it and put into a special reserve for the Cypress tank so that at the end of this budget stretch, even if we don't take out the loan, we've got some chunk of money there that we've held out into a Cypress reserve?
So that would be held for council approval and oversight for what they would like used for
Is that
that
something we
reserve.
should put into this resolution, that if for some reason that loan is not activated, that the debt payment in this budget would be held into a Cypress tank reserve? That'd be my only question.
Okay.
I think we can give that as feedback, and that was Councilmember Harvey's earlier suggestion as well, that we intend to do that, but the creation of a reserve account, I think, would be on a future agenda.
Okay.
If we actually come to that. So if it comes to the point where we're not doing the project on the schedule that we're doing it, I think it's clear we would like to see that come back as a formal, okay, we'll start socking money away for it.
Thank you.
Fair? Yeah, Councilmember Harvey.
Yeah, I guess the question is that something that we have to do anything about right now, or is giving you that feedback of our intentions, is that satisfactory? I just don't want to have us, slide by this and then go, oh, well, nobody said anything, and there we go again.
Yeah, it doesn't happen being wrapped into this item. This item's purpose is to get the Prop 218 public notification process going and set the date for the public hearing. We've got plenty of opportunities later on to have even a separate item for that.
Thank you.
Any more discussion? Councilmember Sparks.
Yeah, when we did our strategic planning and we put our dots on the wall, I put my dot on infrastructure as being, for anyone who wasn't here, we had a list of priorities and we were kind of ranking how we felt how their relative urgency was. And, I really think it's just so important that we switch to this more proactive way of handling our infrastructure. And so as painful as the rate increases are looking, I'm supportive of the concept, and I think it's so important for us to really get these projects done. The one thing, though, that I feel a little bit uncomfortable about is I don't feel as a policymaker up here that I have a good understanding of why our sewer rate is higher than our neighbors in Santa Rosa and Rohnert Park. So as we start this, I'm comfortable moving forward with this tonight because I know this is going to come back and there's going to be opportunity for public comment. But before we make an ultimate decision, I want to have a real understanding of why our sewer rate is going to be higher than Santa Rosa and Rohnert Park, so substantially higher. Yeah.
Thank you. So I think we'd ask for that when it comes back at the next meeting, the March 11th meeting would be, if that's possible, figure something out.
Sorry, just to make sure I'm clear, I think so the resolution has, it's a March 27th public hearing, but is the suggestion to come back before then, before the
No.
actual? Is it? Oh, May 7th, okay.
Right, no, the next meeting in the calendar that the consultant showed us, I
Yeah,
thought
yeah,
said
yeah.
March 11th, but
Yeah.
I may be wrong.
So not the public hearing meeting, but just
Yeah,
a-
yeah,
a
whatever
meeting
the
in the
next
near
time
future.
we revisit the topic is. I know it's in several meeting process.
Okay.
Yeah, there it is. Yeah, March 11th, when the rate study final recommendation comes back, it'd be great to have a better understanding.
yeah,
Okay,
all right, got it.
all good? Okay, anybody interested in making a motion?
I'll give it a shot. I recommend we adopt a resolution accepting the draft water and sewer rate study and direct staff to proceed with the Prop 218 public noticing process for the proposed water and sewer rate adjustments and to set a date for the public hearing and adoption of the rates with all of the other things that we asked you to do.
And I'm going to clarify that the date is May 27th, 2025, that we're setting, okay? Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. We have a motion. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? All right, that carries unanimously. And I'm going to request that we take a 5-minute break right now. Now good? All right. We're back from recess, and we'll move on to agenda item 12B, which is council assignments as representatives and liaisons to various committees for calendar year 2025. We're revisiting this because we have a new council member, so we need to look at appointments. Is there a staff report?
I was just going to briefly say, Mayor and Council, that, yeah, this is something that the council typically does annually in January after the reorganization, or right after the reorganization, and you'll notice in the packet there's a summary sheet and then the detail sheet. It's the same thing, but the detail just provides more information about each one of the committees. And as you'll notice as you read through the narrative there, some committees are more time-consuming than others, and some can tend to be higher profile than others. So those are all also considerations when the council is looking at different assignments for primaries and alternates. Outside of this, just to remind everyone that Councilmember Harvey and Vice Mayor Lemus also have appointments with Cal Cities. That's not specifically shown here, but that's also sort of just for your awareness generally. And traditionally, the mayor would lead the conversation through each one of the assignments. Just so you know, the assignments that previously had Councilmember Rivers in it is shown as vacant on the summary table. Obviously, that doesn't restrict you to just those ones, but those are the ones previously held by Councilmember Rivers. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions if there are any.
Great. Does anybody have any questions before we take public comment?
Oh, there was actually one other thing I wanted to add. Sorry.
Go ahead.
There was an addendum to this that came out because there was a omission in the table that was published originally. And this is the Climate Action Advisory Committee. It showed as vacant originally, but actually Neil Hancock is the appointed member there.
We have 2 slots. Oh, yes, go ahead.
There are 2 slots,
Right.
so there still is one vacant in the red version we have. So there's Neil and a vacant.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you. Okay, so I will open this up for public comment. Anybody wishing to make a comment on the council assignments? Feel free to come on up. We'll start in the chambers. Okay, not seeing any here. We'll go to Zoom.
Thank you, Mayor Ford. Once again, speaking to our Zoom attendees, please use the raise hand icon to make a public comment on this item. Seeing no hands, that will end public comment. Thank you, Mayor Ford.
Great. All right, so back to council for discussion. I'm going to invite Councilmember Savage to talk first about interests that he has and his thoughts about where he'd like to go with appointments.
Thank you, Mayor. I've looked through this and the supporting document, and I've talked to some of the other council members about their assignments, and I've learned a lot during that process, and I think wherever you feel I could be most beneficial, I'm happy to serve wherever you think it would be best.
Well, that doesn't narrow things down very much.
Just put my name on all the blank ones.
Yeah, comments or discussion. I want to be clear, you talked about a position with only a single other person.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Their specific positions.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
I would just like to know, in terms of these vacant ones that Councilmember Rivers vacated, are there any of those that you would be willing to fill, or do we need to shuffle other folks into those positions?
I would be willing to fill those positions, yeah.
And do you know about what times they all happen, or do you
Yeah.
have a schedule? Okay.
Yeah,
Okay. And is anyone else interested in stepping into any of those? I'm not, but sort of curious what other people.
I think that would be great if
Yeah, I
John
mean,
could take those.
Right, if you have, so there's education, library, and the business, and the Rotary Club.
The Rotary Club, I understood, wasn't on here previously. It was something
Right.
that Kay brought specifically,
That's
so I
true.
didn't know if that was going to be kept on here.
It depends on whether there's somebody interested in keeping up that connection, so, and it doesn't have to be you.
Yeah, I don't think I would keep up that.
Okay. But the education and library positions are of interest to you?
Yes.
Okay, that is great. So let's pencil you into those 2.
And if you need another one on the Climate Action Advisory Committee, a second person, I would do that also.
Yeah, now that's an interesting one that it does not have to be council members, but it is an opportunity, and I think it would be a powerful statement on Katati's part to have a council member
Okay.
fill one of those seats.
Yeah.
So if you're
I'd be
willing to
glad
do
to,
that, that'd
yeah.
be great.
And we have precedent for that with Councilmember Harvey serving on the Mosquito and Vector Control Board, which also doesn't have to be filled by a council member, so.
Well, the Climate Action Committee is a little bit of a different one.
Okay.
It's usually appointed by the director directly rather
okay.
than councils. So,
That's right.
yeah.
So, right. So, and Councilmember Harvey is the one that makes the appointment, not the council for the Climate Advisory Committee. So you'll just have to talk nicely to Councilmember Harvey.
Can we have a council member on that? I don't know. I mean, I certainly can ask. If it doesn't clarify it, I can,
Yeah, we probably
Contact-
worth a question with RCPA.
Yeah,
'cause I'm not-
I can-
Typically, there's just non-elected citizens. But
right, but
Maybe.
we've tried a couple of times, and Neil graciously stepped up to do it, so I think I'll call them tomorrow. How's that?
So pending a check and a discussion
Yeah.
between you two.
Yes.
That one's not before us.
Okay.
But it's a good point. Thank you for your willingness to do that. And is there anybody in any of the other positions who's looking for relief from a position that they want to shuffle out of? That's the other. Okay. Are you willing to begin your term with those two appointments?
Yes, certainly.
Potentially.
Are there any alternatives that need to be filled, or are those all good?
The Chamber of Commerce.
Chamber of Commerce, yeah.
Oh,
Okay.
right. The Chamber of Commerce liaison.
I can do that as
If you
well.
have interest in that, that'd be great.
The Rotary Club, I don't think I am going to be able to serve as the primary on that.
Yeah.
I was willing to step in on occasion as needed, but I'm not gonna be able to go
Can't
to
do it
all their
regularly.
meetings, yeah.
Okay.
I'd be willing to do that unless you want to do it. I'm willing
The
to,
Rotary Club? I
Yeah.
do not. No,
okay.
I'm not able to do
willing to
that.
do that.
That would be great.
Yeah.
I think it's a valuable connection.
Yeah, thank you, it just doesn't work with my
your
schedule, yeah.
I get that.
Okay. Any other comments or changes needed to this list? Okay, I suppose we make these appointments by a motion to move to, so somebody want to move to confirm this slate of appointments?
Move to confirm the slate of appointments that we just discussed?
Second?
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, that carries 4-0. Thank you. And that will move us on to a city manager's report.
All right, so hot off the press, it turns out we have a planning commissioner vacancy. So, yeah, so that's posted as of this evening, and we're going to start getting the word out on that. Anyone that's interested in a planning commission position, the posting will be open until 5 p.m. on Thursday, March 13th. So we have a little bit of time there, but we'll be getting the word out. Also, later this week, the initial Police Advisory Committee meeting is going to be held at 6 p.m. here at City Hall. This is on February 27th. We have the 2025 Street Improvement Project out to bid. So this is it's not a reconstruction project, it's a preservation project. And it's going to be a spot repairs on Old Red. Anyway, crack seal and slurry for a lot of different areas, including East Katati and parts of East Katati, Baytree, Fornode, Jagle, Honor, Dorfman, Clothier, Logan. So that whole general area is going to get slurries. They're due for updates. Also, on the other side of the hill, Loma Linda Court, Issel, and Water Road on that side. And then some temporary traffic data instruments were installed last week on L section at Loretto and Benson. Actually, I think they're off now. They're gone, but as of, I went by there today and they seem to be gone now. But they were a point of interest for the neighbors. We have a consultant that's doing a mini traffic study on Benson and Loretto to deal with to look at ways to mitigate some of the speeding and also speeding and also people going around the corner too fast and cutting the corner. That's a concern for some of the residents there. And we also have a climate-ready Cotati Fair coming up, and that's something the city's going to be hosting at the Cotati Train Station Depot on March 29th from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. It is free and will feature more than 30 community organizations and agencies providing resources and information that you can use. In addition, join us for activities to help you reduce, reuse, and recycle and have fun. And thought this is kind of interesting. I hear that you can even pedal your way to a free smoothie with the Sonoma County Bike Coalition's pedal-powered blender they're going to have out there at that day. So it should be a fun day. And this Saturday and Sunday, we're having our free monthly compost giveaways at the Veranda Floody Ranch from 10 a.m. to 12 p.m. to noon. The self-service station allows for up to 1 truck bed full of free compost. And this is a partnership with Zero Waste Sonoma. We host the site and man it, so to speak, but they provide the compost. Also happening on Saturday will be our monthly volunteer day at the ranch at the same time from 10 a.m. to noon. And volunteers that come out can help prep the row gardens for spring planting, mulch the pathways, and weed the food forest area. And it's a great way to give back to and help make the ranch spring ready. So that's all moving forward. Spring break camp is coming up March 17th to 21st. This is the week that school is out, and it's from 8 to 5 p.m. each day with our staff. And it's for ages 5 to 12. Also through the spring is our Sandy Loam Early Enrichment Program at the ranch on Wednesdays from noon to 5 p.m. for children kindergarten through 5th grade. The program includes farm and nature education, homework time, and more. And then some upcoming events, just to round it out, are some spring events, Bunny Brunch and Egg Hunt, which is almost already sold out, Bunnygrams, community yard sale, and multiple summer camps. And you can sign up and find all this information on the city website. And we'll just leave it there unless anybody has any questions.
Thank you. Any questions for the city manager? Okay, so we'll move on to city council members' reports. I'll start down at this end. Councilmember Sparks.
Sure. I attended the 2x2x2x2. We actually did meet on Wednesday. We're back in business. It was a pretty small meeting. It was just myself and the superintendent of the school board and then the 2 city council reps from Rohnert Park. And we had a good discussion about, what are the types of things that we can partner on together. And the main thing that the school district was bringing is that they're going to be holding an evacuation safety event, mock evacuation with their schools in October. And so they were looking for some partnership, maybe coordination with that. And so we're going to be in touch with them about that. I also did bring up the tobacco sales policy that we had discussed, since it's really relevant to schools. And there's just some other possibilities to work together, perhaps on a creek cleanup event, taking advantage of volunteers from the school and letting the kids get involved with that, and just some other kind of good things to partner on. So we will be continuing those conversations. Our next meeting is scheduled for April, and the school district is taking them over. So we're now meeting we met at the district office next to Tech Middle School, and we'll be meeting there in April. That's my report.
Councilmember Harvey.
Okay, a couple things. Let's see. First, on February 12th, I attended the Marin-Sonoma Mosquito Vector Control District meeting, and there were some minor things about the committees for this year. So more to come on that. We had a little budget adjustment. And then finally, they had the proposed community outreach events. They will be attending our Climate Ready Fair on March 29th, and I also invited them to come to Kids Day, and they do have a mosquito, and so hopefully the mosquito will agree to be in the parade. So anyways, don't look at me that way, Damien.
Hopefully not the biting kind of mosquito.
No, no, a very kind mosquito. On 2/18, I attended the Master Plan on Aging Caregiving Team Action Committee, and we looked at what our possible action items are for this year, and we kind of did similar to what we did here with the little dots. They had laid out some different actions for us to look at and work on. So we ended up combining a couple of the other ones, and so we'll be starting to work on what our action plan is for that. And then lastly, on February 20th, I attended the Zero Waste Sonoma meeting, and we looked at a tentative budget for this year, and also the new guides are out. So hopefully, did you get our guides yet, Damien? Okay. Well, they be delivering them, and they get a lot of questions about what it means for the composting, and so that's why they made this year their focus is why does it matter, so that people can understand why it's important to put the stuff in the green bin. So that is all I have to report.
Thank you, and that'll go out to all customers? Is that the idea?
They'll bring them to the various cities, and people can come pick them up, and it's also online, and they can page through it online, and it's in English and Spanish. And we usually get both of them here.
Great, thank you. Anything to report?
Nothing for me, thank you.
Okay. I just have a few things. Since our last regular meeting, we had the Mayors and Council Members Association meeting, and at the board meeting, or the City Selection Committee meeting preceding that, most of our selections were successful. I mean, our choices were successful, except we were not successful at electing the vice mayor to the SMART board. That position went to Victoria Fleming from Santa Rosa instead. Otherwise, we were in the majority on all of those votes. And at that Mayors and Council Members General Membership meeting, we had some excellent presentations from the the County Public Defender's Office and the District Attorney about the changing legal landscape with federal immigration enforcement and what it might mean for us. Good discussion. I think that's all I have to report. So with that, we'll move on to public comment on non-action agenda items. Anybody wishing to comment on anything that wasn't, on any agenda item that was not an action item? Not seeing any in the chambers, we'll go to Zoom.
Thank you, Mayor Ford. Once again, speaking to our Zoom attendees, please use the raise hand icon to make a public comment. The first hand is from Lori. Lori, you have the floor.
As it is obvious today, direction on future agenda items, you need to have a public workshop and discussion about providing ADA accommodations and what is a qualified individual to get versus a public person, to get in the whole process to get ADA accommodations. I personally have had ADA accommodations for 10 years. In this, I'm a previous occupational therapist, and my ADA accommodations are based on my academic accommodations when I was in school. So they're just not, somebody can come off the street and ask for an extra minute. I know George Barrett's been at least 6 years a qualified individual. The city, you also need to have on the agenda accessibility in the city as an agenda item in the future, because even during things like this west side, the sidewalk gap, during construction, you have to consider the disabled, and like we can't go down the pathway, the West School pathway for the last 3 months. We can't even go on the street. There needs to be a discussion of how disability accommodations and the disabled and just generally everything having to do with accessibility in the city needs to be on a future agenda item. Thank you.
Thank you.
That was the last hand on Zoom. That will end public comment. Thank you, Mayor Ford.
Okay. Thank you. Was there any information received after the agenda was posted?
All the items received are available here in the print, here in the chamber in print, and were posted to the HTML agenda. Thank you.
Great. And with that, we'll adjourn at whatever time it is, 7:55.